When allies turn inward, the Mukalla incident and the quiet fracture of Gulf power. In the early hours of December 30th, 2025, Saudi aircraft struck targets near Yemen's eastern port city of Mukalla. On the surface, this appeared remarkable, another episode in a decade-long war defined by air power, proxies, and blurred battle lines. Yet, within hours, it became clear that these strikes were different. The targets were not Houthi positions, nor were they associated with Al Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. Instead, these were linked to forces backed by the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia's closest regional partner and the co-architect of the Gulf's post-2015 security architecture. The Mukalla incident marked a quiet but consequential rupture in the Gulf politics. It exposed long-suppressed contradictions within the Saudi-UAE partnership and revealed how alliances built for war often fracture when the question shifts from battlefield coordination to post-conflict control. What unfolded over Mukalla was not merely a tactical miscalculation, but the visible manifestation of a deeper struggle over power, legitimacy, and future political order of Yemen, and by extension, the Gulf itself. Mukalla, a port at the crosswinds of power, Mukalla occupies a unique strategic position along with Yemen's southern coast. Facing the Gulf of Aden, it sits astride maritime routes connecting the Red Sea, the Arabian Sea, and the wider Indian Ocean. While smaller than Aden or Hodeidah, Mukalla functions as the economic gateway to Hadramaut, Yemen's largest governorate and a region long viewed as a prize by both domestic and external actors. Beyond its geographic value, Mukalla is deeply embedded in Yemen's energy and logistic networks. It serves as a terminal for crude oil and natural gas exports, linking inland production zones to international markets. In a post-war scenario, control over Mukalla would translate into leverage over reconstruction contracts, custom revenues, and trade flows, assets that matter as much as military victories, shaping long-term influence. It is precisely this blend of military, economic, and political significance that had turned Mukalla into a focal point of competition. By December 2025, large parts of the city's surrounding areas were under the effective control of the UAE-backed forces, many affiliated with Southern Transition Council (STC). For Abu Dhabi, Mukalla represented another node in a network of ports, islands, and coastal corridors stretching from the Horn of Africa to the Arabian Peninsula. For Riyadh, however, the consolidation of Emirati-aligned militias in such a strategic location posed an uncomfortable challenge to its vision of Yemen's future, a coalition under strain. Since 2015, Saudi Arabia and the UAE have presented themselves as the twin pillar of Gulf security interventionism, united by a single objective: countering Iranian influence and restoring Yemen's internationally recognized government. The two states initially appeared aligned in both purpose and method. Over time, however, this unity masked profound difference in strategic outlook. Saudi Arabia approached the Yemen conflict primarily as a national security threat. The war was viewed through the prism of border defense, missile deterrence, and the protection of Red Sea shipping lanes. Riyadh's reliance on air power reflected on both military doctrine and desire to limit ground exposure while maintaining strategic depth. The UAE, by contrast, adopted a more granular approach. Rather than focusing on Yemen as a single theater, Abu Dhabi treated it as a mosaic of strategic assets. It emphasized on local proxies, port management, limited footprint deployments, allowed it to embed influence without assuming the political reputational cost of prolonged occupation. The STC became the centerpiece of this strategy, in the south offering a vehicle through which UAE could shape local governance structures while retaining plausible deniability. For years, this divergent approach coexisted uneasily within Saudi-led coalition. Mukalla, however, became the point where contradiction turned into confrontation. The December 13 strikes, more than a tactical event. The Saudi strikes near Mukalla were officially framed as a response to alleged armed deliveries and unauthorized militia activity. Yet the choice of targets timing suggested something more deliberate. By striking UAE-aligned positions, Riyadh sent a signal not to Abu Dhabi but to all actors operating in Yemen's fragmented landscapes. At a minimum, the incident exposed a breakthrough in coalition command and control. Joint operations dependent on de-confliction mechanisms, shared intelligence, and a common standing of strategic red lines. The fact that Saudi aircraft engaged links to a coalition partner indicated that the mechanism had eroded, if not collapsed, entirely. More fundamentally, the strikes revealed the limits of alliance cohesion under prolonged strains. As the conflict shifted from active warfare to contested stabilization, the question was no longer how to defeat a common enemy, but who would shape the political and economical order that followed in this context. Mukalla became less a battlefield than a bargaining chip, and Saudi Arab appeared unwilling to concede it. Withdrawal or recalibration. The UAE announced later the same day it would withdraw its forces from Yemen and conclude its counter-terrorism operations, added another layer of complexity. While presented as a recalibration rather than a retreat, the timing underscored the depth of the rift. The decision signaled a broader Emirati reassessment of risk exposure and operational costs, consistent with a pattern of strategic retrenchment observed across the region. Yet withdrawal doesn't mean disengagement. The UAE influence in southern Yemen rests less on troop deployments than on entrenched local partnership, economic stakes, and control over critical infrastructure. By reducing its visible footprint, Abu Dhabi may sought to preserve its assets while minimizing the likelihood of further direct confrontation with Riyadh. For Saudi Arab, however, the move reinforced concerns with the UAE was pursuing an independent agenda incompatible with the coalition's stated objectives. Accusations that Abu Dhabi had supplied ammunition in separatist forces, undermining ceasefire efforts, would deepen mistrust, transforming operational disagreements into strategic suspicion. Regional reverberations. The implications of the Mukalla incident extend far beyond Yemen. Within the Gulf Cooperation Council, the episode challenges long-held assumptions about unity, collective security. If the bloc's two most powerful members can enter direct confrontation, smaller states may be encouraged to hedge their bets, diversify partnership, and pursue more autonomous foreign policies. Iran, too, stands to benefit from this fracture. Southern fragmentation weakens Saudi Arab's negotiating positions and complicates efforts to achieve a comprehensive settlement that limits Tehran's influence. From this perspective, the absence of cohesion among Gulf rivals serves as Iranian influence without requiring direct intervention. Interna- Intentionally, the muted response from the United States reflects shifting priorities as Washington focuses on strategic competition with China and ongoing commitments in Europe. Its appetite for active mediation in Gulf duties appear diminished, restrained by interpreted regionally as a signal that external oversight waning, potentially embolden unilateral actions and increasing the risk of miscalculation. Yemen's deepening fragmentation. For Yemen itself, the consequences are stark. UAE-backed forces have played a significant role in securing southern ports and suppressing extremist groups. Saudi strikes against these sectors destabilize local security arrangements, creating openness for rival militias, exacerbating humanitarian pressures. More broadly, continued rivalry between external sponsors entrenches the country's de facto partition. As northern Yemen consolidates under Houthi control, southern fragmentation undermines the intentionally recognized government's legitimacy and bargaining power. The prospect of a unified post-conflict state grows increasingly remote, replaced by a patchwork of zones aligned with competing external interests. Redrawing the lines of Gulf power, the Mukalla incident represents a critical inflection point in Gulf security dynamics. It demonstrates that alliances forged in crisis are vulnerable when strategic objectives change. The coalition coalition warfare often sows the seeds of post-war rivalry. The episode also underscores a broader transformation in regional politics, where influence is exercised not only through military force, but through the control of ports, proxies, and economic corridors. As 2026 unfolds, the fallout of Mukalla will continue to shape Saudi-UAE relations, GCC cohesion, and the trajectory of the Yemen conflict. Whether the rift hardens into open rivalry and is managed through quiet diplomacy remains uncertain. What is clear, however, is the incident has redrawn the lines of Gulf power, revealing a region where alignment is increasingly transactional and stability is far more fragile. In this evolving landscape, the capacity to manage fractures, to recognize when cooperation has given way to competition, may prove more decisive than battlefield success itself. Mukalla stands as a reminder that in geopolitics, the most consequential battles are often fought against not against enemies, but among allies.